Katrina's Creations. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. If you're a new viewer, thanks for stopping by, and click the little red subscribe button down below, and that way you'll be notified whenever I put out a video, which is usually on Saturdays at some point in time, whenever I get them done and uploaded. So a special thank you to my husband today, because we're in the middle of having a yard sale. It is 90 degrees, humid, nasty, icky weather. Can we pick them or what? When to do a yard sale? So anyway, we have a yard sale set up in our garage right now, and he actually gave me a reprieve for a while to come up and get the podcast done before it gets too late today. So a special shout out to my husband, who is handling the masses of people. Actually, I wish it was the case, but it's 1:30 in the afternoon, so most of everybody who's come is going to, but we're stuck in the garage till 4 o'clock. So maybe I'll melt some pounds off. We could hope, but I doubt that's going to work. Although it does feel like a sweat box out there right now. We have 2 fans going, but it's still kind of nasty. So if I look a little drippy and sweaty, that would be why, because we've been sitting in the garage since 7 o'clock this morning. So that all being said, I'm going to get started with my works in progress. I only have one project that I worked on this week. I do have one that I've got set up to start. This is the bag that I got last week that I won from the Yarn and You Girl podcast, and this is a Stitch and You bag. I have not started the project, but I've got the needles. I'm doing a pair of socks. I've made socks before, just haven't made them for quite a while. So there's the yarn. It is Crofter DK. It's actually, I know it's not really sock weight yarn, but I don't wear socks like every day type of thing, because I wear dresses all the time, but I do wear fuzzy socks on my feet, so that's why I know the weight isn't right, but I want fuzzy socks for my feet, because I do wear those around the house. And the pattern I'm going to do is going to be one of 2. I'm not sure which one. One is called the Blueberry Waffle Sock, which you really can't see in the picture. It came out really, really dark. But anyway, I did not print this on a color printer. On a color printer. So it's either going to be the Blueberry Waffle, or it is going to be the Mercury Socks. And that's what they look like. They're kind of lacy looking. Not sure which one I'm going to do yet. Both of these are free patterns on Ravelry. So that is, when I finish the shawl that's taking me forever, that's going to be the next thing I make. I have been working almost exclusively on my banner unfurled. That's the pattern I designed. Here's a picture of it. If you would like a copy of it, there it is. This is the red, white, and blue version of it. I'll show you the turquoise one in a minute. It is normally $4 for the pattern, but if you go on Ravelry and type in the coupon code capital C or capital K, capital C 20, it'll give you 20% off. So I think it gets it for $3.20. So that's what I am making for my project for the knit along that we're doing with that pattern. And I have been determined I'm going to finish it, because it would drive me crazy to be sponsoring a knit along and then me not finish the project itself. So even though knitting with this tiny little toothpicky needles, I think these are size 2. I think that's what I'm doing, this with size 2. I feel like I've been knitting this forever. Normally I can do this shawl. It's normally a sport weight shawl. So I actually counted my stitch count, and I have double the number of stitches on the needles to go all the way across than the pattern actually calls for, because I'm knitting it to try to get to gauge. So yeah, so it's over 200 stitches at this point to go across. But here's what it looks like so far. I was all the way down here. Like I said, I've been knitting on this like crazy. I was here last week, and I am up to here. And like I said, it is over 200 stitches across at this point. So here's what it looks like so far. And this is really, really stretchy. I mean, I do like the fabric this is creating. I will never knit this again in lace weight. Like I said, I'm getting tendinitis in both of my bases of my thumbs right here. I can feel it. And so every so often I have to stop and like shake my hands, except that hurts to do that. So I will not do it in lace weight again. I bought yarn to make one for my mother and for my daughter, but I have enough yarn that I'm actually going to knit like 3 of these lace weights together to get a little bit closer to the normal weight it should be, so that I can use bigger needles and it will go faster. I've been working on this forever. But anyway, I do like the way it looks. And it's very, very, aside from being very soft, when I block this, you can see how much stretch this has. So when I block it, it's going to be larger than what it looks like right now. So I'm really happy how much this lace is going to open up. Like I said, if I block it aggressively, it's really going to open up nice. And I think it'll show the pattern really well. So, and it's pretty true to color. I'll get it a little bit closer so you can see. It's a gray, a white, and then it has kind of a multicolored denim. And then the beads that I got for it are also like in an enameled denim type of color, like a grayish, kind of a grayish blue. So I'm really happy with that. It's been living in my Must Love Yarn bag. And I found out from Kelly at Must Love Yarn, I did ask her, I said, did your mother make this? And she said, yes, this was one that her mom made. So that made it extra special. So, yes, it goes everywhere with me. I've been knitting it every place I can think of at this point. So that is my project for the knit along. The knit along is going to come to an end next Sunday. It ends on July 30th, and the following day, which will be Monday the 31st of July, I will put out a very short video announcing who the winner is. We have 3 entries right now. There is one that is in a blue and a chocolate and a cream color. There's one in some autumn type of colors. And there is another one that is in the red, white, and blue, which is what it was originally written in. So, and you all know the drill. Here's the prize. I'm not going to go into all of it. But there's a project bag, a skein of primrose yarn, stitch markers, and a progress keeper. So, and that will be announced, like I said, next Sunday. Not this coming Sunday, a week from this Sunday. So, if you do like the pattern, I doubt you'd be able to get it knitted at this point fast enough to enter it into my knit along, but the Three Sisters knit is also having a knit along with the same pattern, and theirs runs till the end of August. So if you would like to still purchase the pattern, like I said, it is available on Ravelry with a discount code of KC20, and that will get you the 20% off. So, and if you are getting it knitted and get it finished in time to enter it in mine, don't forget that as long as you started it after June 15th, you can enter it into Three Sisters knit as well. And they are also giving away a project bag and a skein of yarn and some other goodies. If you check out their the podcast they just put up the other day, it shows the prizes. And one of the sisters, Sheila, has finished hers. She was actually wearing hers in the picture, or during the podcast. So if you haven't checked them out, check them out. They are a Canadian, 2 women in two Canadian women that are sisters. And so their podcast is called Three Sisters Knit. So give them a look-see. And then next I'm going to talk about our vacation plans. I had shown you a few weeks ago 3 pages of yarn shops in the Connecticut, Rhode Island area. I've now narrowed it down to 12 yarn shops. Some of these are small, and some of them I could not even find a website. One of them is right in Newport, but I couldn't find like what kind of yarn they carry or anything else. They didn't have a website. So I'm there anyway. I'll just check it out. If I find something, I find something. So I've got it down to 12 yarn shops at this point. And I also, to try to narrow things down even further, I know specifically when I go to a yarn shop and I'm like souvenir shopping for the most part, because I don't want to take business away from my local yarn shop. I don't want to go buy yarns that I could get from her. I'd rather give her the business. Last year I came home with all these different yarns and I was showing it to her, and she was like, oh, well, I carry that. I had this. And I was like, I messed up because I really didn't mean to do that. If I'm going to go to a yarn shop away from home, I want to buy something I can't get in my local yarn shop. Because like I said, there's so many yarn shops that are going out of business. They've got to compete with online stores and everything else. So, if you're able to buy stuff at your local yarn shop, that's the way to go. So, but I do have some specific things that I cannot get at my local yarn shop that I would like to try to find, that I've heard people talk about. One is called Sweet Georgia, and I think everybody's heard of Sweet Georgia yarns. Hedgehog Fibers, another familiar one. Quince & Co., which their prices for Quince & Co., I mean, I'll show you what I did. Besides writing down the yarn I want, I went online to see what the prices were, what they normally charge. So when I walk into a shop, I can kind of know what to expect. I mean, I know if I buy the yarn online, I've got to allow shipping charges. So just to kind of give me an idea of where this falls, price-wise. So I want some Quince & Co. I also want some Query Fiber. Now, I do already have some. I have a sock blank that I bought at Love to Knit last year, and they sell Query Fibers because it's a local dyeing artist that's local to them, and but I'd like to get some more of the Query Fiber. And then there is a Claudia yarn. It's Claudia Co., I think it's called, or Claudia Addiction. Now, if you watch the SSK Yarners, they would go on different field trips to different yarn stores, and one of their episodes, it's episode 11, they went to a dyeing studio. They went to Claudia's dyeing studio, and I really enjoyed that episode, and I saw her yarns, but they're in the South. I think they're in South Carolina, around the Atlanta area. I think that's where they're at. So I've never seen any Claudia yarn up this direction, but I found out that there is a store, one of the stores that I'm going to go to actually carries it. So I'm excited to see if I can get a skein of that yarn. So thank you, SSK Yarners, for that episode and for a yarn idea. So yeah, Karen and Sharon and Sherlyn, thank you very much. I enjoyed that episode. It was fun watching a professional dyer do her thing. So on that note, with talking about vacation, if you would, I'm not going to go into all my detailed plans with vacations unless you really want to see how I do it. But when I plan my vacation, I actually have a whole itinerary with me, including in the directions, where all the places to eat are at. I go online and get coupons for some places before I get there. If you would be interested in seeing how I do that, I used to actually have a blog that I did on organizing, because I enjoy organizing things. So if it's something you would be interested in seeing, how I narrowed down my list for the yarn shops and how I plan vacations, and if you're on the East Coast like I am, especially the Northeast Coast, you've got to be very careful with bed bugs, because the New York, Boston, Washington corridor is crawling with them. Apparently there's lots of them. We've never run into them, and it's not what I do is not a foolproof thing, but it certainly helps. So if you would be interested in seeing me do a little segment on my vacation planning, click the little thumbs up down here, and then if I see that there's enough people interested, then I'll do it. Otherwise, I don't want to bore everybody. So our topic today is going to be on lace. Now, I've talked about knitted lace before, but more like lace panels and the history of knitting before. What I'm talking about today are 3 specific types of lace knitting. These are specifically shawls, and I started doing a little bit of research because I do knit lace. Now, when I say knitting lace, I'm not talking about like my Find Your Fade here that has a lace panel. Like here it has a lace panel. I'm not talking about a lace panel. When I'm talking about lace, I'm talking where the entire shawl is done with lace. Oops, and I'm holding it upside down. There we go. Where the entire shawl is done with lace. So there's 3 different types, and they all kind of, they have a lot of similarities, and yet they have some very distinctive differences. So I thought I would talk a little bit about that, and so here goes our lace history lesson for this week. And I will put a little segment at the end of the video. I will put the websites where you can find some more of this information. And Crafty actually has some of the information I got was from the Crafty website. And they had a history of lace knitting, and that's where I got a lot of the information from. But they also have patterns and some classes available on lace knitting as well. So I will put the information at the end of the video, at the end of this video, showing where I got the information and the links to it. So let me get in with our history lesson. Okay, lace shawls date back, the earliest ones they have are to the early 1500s. They evolved out of needlework lace, and they evolved out of what was called cutwork. Now, cutwork, Battenberg lace is very similar. It's where you have a piece of fabric and you actually remove threads out of it so that you intentionally create a hole, and then you would like stitch around the hole and fill the hole in with design work. So Battenberg lace is very similar to that, but that was called cut work, and where you're basically creating holes or windows. And there was also bobbin lace that would get started about 100 years later. So knitted lace actually came first. Bobbin lace is the one where you see women holding bolster pillows, and they have all these spools of thread that they're kind of tossing back and forth, and it's turning in, I would turn it into a knot, they turn it into a beautiful piece of lace work. So there's 3 main forms of these lace shawls. It's a Shetland shawl, which comes from the Shetland Islands. There's the Orenburg, which comes from a section of Russia. And there's the Estonian, which also comes from a region of Russia. They were so fine, these 3 types of shawls, that they were also called wedding ring shawls. I think in India they also have a shawl that's similar to this too, but I don't know if it's knitted. It might be woven with a special type of wool. But it's done with, it's so fine a work that they could literally pull the shawl through their wedding ring. That's how finely knit it was. So it became popular. They're usually made also out of cashmere or silk or some type of a blend between the two. The most well-known that people know of is the Shetland shawl. And the reason it's most well-known is because of Queen Victoria. The Shetland Islands in Scotland, the earliest example they have is the 1830s. It might have existed before then, but that's the earliest that they have of an example of it. Queen Victoria very much loved Scotland, and she also loved Shetland shawls. And so she started gifting them to people, including, and I found this interesting, Harriet Tubman, the abolitionist. She actually had a shawl that was given to her by Queen Victoria. So after that, because it was popular with the Queen, it started catching on in ladies' magazines, and so patterns started showing up for Shetland-like shawls at that point. Then there are the Orenburg shawls. Like I said, it's a region of Russia, and making shawls for them became a cottage industry that was actually subsidized by the Russian government, and that subsidy continued until 1995, which I thought that was really, really interesting. They're usually made of silk and an indigenous goat hair that is similar to cashmere. They are always knit in the garter, in a garter motif, not stockinette, but they're knit in garter, where the Shetland could be knit in garter or stockinette. It can be both, but the Orenburg is always knit in garter stitch. Then the third one is called the Estonian shawl, and it was developed in the Haapsalu region. In fact, sometimes they are referred to as Haapsalu shawls. It is an area of Russia, and the Haapsalu area was a tourist region. There was a lot of visitors that came in, So people in the region started knitting these shawls to sell to the tourists, and so it became popular that way. The earliest known version of the shawl they have is the 1700s. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's in the 1800s. About the same time as the other shawls. The Orenburg shawl is about 250 to 300 years old, and the Estonian is right around the same time period. So all three versions of the shawl came out roughly within 50 years of each other, between the early 1800s and mid 1800s. But Estonia was the region that was ruled by Russia up until 1918 at the end of the First World War. Then it broke away and became its own country. And like I said, the women were knitting for the tourist industry and supporting their families. There are a lot of similarities between the Orenburg shawl and the Estonian shawl because they're both coming out of Russia. So there's a lot of similarities, but one of the main differences is the Orenburg shawl, like I said, is always knit in garter. The Estonian is almost always in stockinette, with the pattern always on the right side. And the Estonian always tend to have a scalloped edge on the edge of the shawl as well. And they are sewn together in the center. These, a lot of times, are not necessarily triangular shawls. A lot of times these are square-shaped shawls. So I did a chart here. So if I get this, you can see it. And it just breaks it down as far as the differences. We have the Orenburg, the Estonian, and the Shetland. The Orenburg and the Estonian are from Russia. Shetland is from Scotland. The Orenburg shawl is always in garter. The Estonian is always in stockinette. And the Shetland can be in garter or stockinette. You'll see the time periods are all very similar. Early to the mid-1700s up into the early 1800s to the 1830s, like the oldest. The motifs in them, with the Orenburg shawl, the motifs tend to be a honeycomb, peas, strawberry, fisheye, chain heart, cat's paw, mouse print, accordion, and diagonals, or diamonds that are in the shawl. Whereas the Estonians, they're very similar. Like I said, they're both coming out of Russia, but they have a very, if you see something done in Lily of the Valley, it is almost always Estonian. It uses a stitch called the nub or nup stitch. It's basically a bobble stitch. They tend to have scalloped edges, and a lot of their versions, they have a lot of leaf type of motifs. They have like a birch, a twig, an ash leaf. They have blueberry, strawberry, lingonberry, and a baby ladybug type of pattern. And then with the Scottish motifs, they tend to be a spiderweb fan, a double daisy, crest of the wave. They tend to have a lot of nautical things because they are an island, so a lot of their motifs are nautical. Like I said, one is called Crest of the Wave, one's called Old Shale, one is called Point o' the Wave, and then the shell print and the cat's paw as well. So these are just different ideas by looking at that you can look at a shawl and see maybe where its origins are from. And even in today's shawls, I'm going to show you some books that I have that I've enjoyed. They're lace shawls. They're not necessarily essentially a Orenburg or an Estonian or a Shetland, but when you start looking at the motifs, you can recognize that they've taken elements from those main type of shawls and put them in. So this is one of my favorites. It is called Beaded Lace Knitting. It is by Annick and Alice, and you can see the shawl here has a lot of diagonals. You'll see it over right in here. There's some of the shawls I'm going to show you that I've made have a lot of leaf patterns to them. Here's a shawl here. Hold the picture. Light. There we go. You can see it. when you see some of these, you kind of get an idea of where they're coming from. Like this is a leaf pattern. This pattern here, you can see the leaf. It's two leaves together forming a heart. So you can see the influence. There's a definite influence that they have followed. Here is a gorgeous square shawl. And it has a scalloped edge, which would tend to make me think it is following like an Estonian type of tradition. Some other patterns that I have ran across. This is one by Debbie O'Neill. And you can see it has like a lily of the valley or a pea pattern, like a pea pod in the pattern. And this one, this is gorgeous. It's called the Queen Sylvia Shawl. It's by Nancy Bush. And I'm going to open this so you can see a big picture of this shawl. It looks like lily of the valley. See all the what they call nup stitches or bobble stitches? And it has, again, the scalloped edge at the bottom. So that would be a clue that it is an Estonian shawl. This one that I have, this is done by Lisa Gentry, and this is a fans pattern, which would be more like, I forget which one had the fans pattern. I don't remember. I think this is the Shetland. It has a kind of a fans and feathers motif, which creates the waves. I actually did a baby blanket out of fans and feathers. And here's just another one. And this is a Nancy Bush shawl. And again, it is actually called Lily of the Valley shawl. And again, it has these scalloped edges, just like the Estonian shawls have. And I keep thinking this book was actually called Estonian Lace. So, that being said, I thought I would show you another book that I ran across. I don't even know if this is still in print, but it is an excellent book and it has a fascinating story. It's called Lace from the Attic. It is by Nancy Wiseman, who is a very, very well-known knitter. But the story behind this lady here was named Blanche Bow. And if I remember rightly, it's been a while since I read this book, but a neighbor came over to Nancy Wiseman's house and said, I have this whole album of knitting patterns. And when she sat and looked at them, they were almost like a scrapbook that this lady had put together of all different edgings and lace patterns, and she had written the patterns for those. I'll show you briefly. Like, here's pictures, and then the lady wrote the pattern for that shawl, or for that particular style or edging. Here's one here. I've actually made this one, the fan edging. I actually put that on, I forget what. I put it on something I made, but I do remember doing it. And so it's all different types of edging and samplers, and they were all put together, like, I think she said they were like a couple inch type of swatch, and they were in this album. And the woman collected them like she did, like you would collect autographs. She had different patterns because it names the people in them that she got the patterns from. One is Mrs. R's Diamond Lace. And it's just a fascinating book. Here's Mrs. Belly's Diamond Edging. So it's fascinating, and the fact that this was put together by a woman in the 1800s, maybe early 1900s. So again, it's called Lace from the Attic, and it was totally fascinating. I don't know if this book is even still available. It was put out by Interweave Press. The copy I have is from 1998, but you might be able to still find it on Amazon or eBay, something like that. But it's a really good reference. So I have that book, and then the other one that I showed you, Beaded Lace. Now I thought I would show you some of my lace shawls that I've made over the years and what the patterns were if I still have the paperwork from them. So the first one I have here, the pattern was just called Mohair Shawl. This is an up-close picture of what the pattern looks like. And I did this, it's in a lightweight wool. It is all on one side, it's in stockinette. So all of the pattern is on the right side. It's in a, it has like gold spark, you can see it really good. It's black with like gold sparkles. But in some lights it almost looks like there's silver sparkles in it as well. But this is the shawl. And I love this shawl because it's very, very lightweight. I've got it blocked pretty aggressively, but it's very lightweight, but because it's wool, it's still warm. And it's large enough that you could wear it like a kerchief around, or you can wear it over your shoulders. Either one. I tend to put it just over my shoulders, but yeah, this is one of my favorites. It was an easy knit. It looks like it's very intricate, but the pattern was really well written, and I liked it. The other one, you cannot tell much from this picture. This was a shoulder warmer, and because they did it in mohair, you really can't see a whole lot of the pattern, but you can see some of it in the back. It's like a little series of little holes. I don't know if this is what would be called cat's paw, but this is what it looks like. This was the very first lace shawl that I made. And what I did is I made the top portion, get this turned around right, the top portion of the shawl is from that pattern, but it just covers your shawl, or your shoulders. It's like a overextended collar, and then I did some sections of stockinette stitch, and then I used one of the borders from the Lace in the Attic book. I don't remember which pattern I used. If I sat down and looked at it, I'd be able to find it. So this was my very first lace weight shawl that I made. And it does have a lot of solid panels too. So technically, I don't know if you consider it a lace shawl. It has a lot in it. It actually just has a solid panel with a hole in the middle of it, by the way, right there. I need to fix a stitch. But I don't wear this one as much, but I tend to wear it. Sometimes, if I'm going to wear it at all, I wear it in summertime, usually if I've got something sleeveless and I just want something over my shoulders. Then I have my Kool-Aid shawl. Now, one thing to learn about with doing lace weight shawls, and that is do them in a solid color. This was a shawl that I made. This was lace weight yarn that I dyed, and then I made it into the shawl. But here's the problem. You would never be able to see that there is actually a pattern in this. You would never guess it, because the yarn itself is so busy that you can't actually see. There's diamonds in here, diamond pattern in here, and it never shows up. And then there's like arching that comes across here, but it never shows up. So I thought I would show you a picture in solid colors of what it really looks like. There we go. That's what the pattern actually looks like. Had I done it in a solid color, you would see it. You can see the diamonds at the bottom. It's a really pretty pattern. It has a scalloped edge. But again, I kind of learned my lesson with it, and that is to do it in solid colors. This is another lace book that's good. It's called Wendy Knits Lace. It's by Wendy Johnson, who is also a well-known knitwear designer. I love this shawl on the back right here. I would love to make that one day. I just don't know if my hands can hold up with trying to do all of the lace work anymore. As I'm getting older, I'm finding that my bifocals don't even work for some of the lace weight that I'm doing. And then this one, I was talking about some things that are leaf patterns. This pattern was called the Lavender Linen Lace Shawl. Again, you can see the influence of the Orenburg and the Estonian. It's got leaf patterns in it. And this was made almost like as a head kerchief or a neck kerchief. It's not full sized because frankly I got tired of doing it after a while, so I made it small. But this is what it looks like. I get it up close so you can see the stitches. It just has, I think it's a 4-stitch on the edge. It's nothing fancy on the edges. And it's just an all-over leaf pattern. And it's one of those, because you start at the bottom and you keep working up, that you can stop at any time. Actually, you just keep making it till you're sick of making it. So I've made this, I made a wool shawl and gave it to somebody once that was out of the same pattern. But yeah, it's a real simple pattern to do. It was one of my first as well. And then there is this falls under lace, but it's not really, it's called a cabled wrap. But I thought I would show it to you because there is a thing called reversible lace. What that means is this is an infinity scarf. There's no real front or back to this. This, you can't tell, there's not really a right side or a wrong side. I'm going to show you up close what it looked like here so you can see the stitch definition a little bit better. Right there. But here is one side. It's like a bunch of like crazy loopy cables. But when you turn it over, this is the back side. So it's reversible. It's the front and the back look pretty much the same. So it's just an interesting way of doing it. It's a little on the lacy side. I just did it with a little heavier material. So it doesn't, it's like a fingering weight. I didn't do it with lace weight, so it doesn't show up as well. And the last lace weight that I have is one I've shown before as well, and that is a Faroese shawl. This is not one that you would wear around your neck because it is actually molded. It's almost like a bat wing type of shape. So that I really like this. Is a Faroese shawl, comes from the Faroe Islands. It is traditional as far as there is a center panel, and you can see kind of the center panel right here. There's yarn overs that run down through the center. They run down here, and then you'll see the other one right here. It has a scalloped edge, and the edging gets sewn on afterward, but it's all lace. I've made this pattern twice. This is the second one. I made one for my mother in like a tan mohair color. I love this shawl. It goes with blue jeans. It goes with just about everything. The way a Faroese shawl is designed, it drapes really easy. Sometimes triangular shawls fall off your shoulders. These don't, and it's actually knit from the top down. You build on it as you go. But I love it just because the way it forms a drape, it's more of a batwing shape than it is a triangular shape. So it's, again, not one that you're going to wear around your, I guess you could, but it wouldn't quite look as well as it does just draped over your shoulders because it stays in place. So it is one of my favorites. So that is my story about lace. Now I thought I would update you on our fair entries. I told you I was going to enter one of the dishcloths, one of the yellow and blue dishcloths that I made. And then I am entering, this is the banner unfurl that was done with fingering weight. If you do make this with fingering weight, it is going to come out smaller than what the pattern shows because the pattern was done in a sport to sock weight. This is a fingering weight. So it's almost scarf size instead. And that's what I'm entering it as, is a scarf. So I had some people ask me when I said I was entering the shawl, and I didn't enter my own shawl, banner unfurled. But the reason being is because I was already entering the one in the scarf category, I didn't want to put the exact same pattern just in different colors into another. I didn't know if I could even do that. So that's why I chose 2 different shawls. So last week I asked you to come up with put your vote in as to which shawl you think I should enter. Right now it is online. I think it is 3 in favor of On the Spice Market, 2 in favor of Find Your Fade. But if you count my coworkers in, I got to laughing the other day. I was at work and my coworker said, "Yeah, we watched your podcast." I was like, "You're kidding." It was apparently a boring stop, and they put my podcast on and watched it and put their own vote in for it. They both voted for On the Spice Market. But the funny thing is, neither of them knit. So my one coworker who had not seen my Find Your Fade before said, "My goodness, that's a long shawl." And my other coworker said, "Yeah, I think it's like 8 feet or something. It's taller than she is." So put your own vote in. Let me know in the comments down below. I don't have to submit these until the 30th for the actual county fair. So it's kind of the county fair, but it's also a 4-H fair, so like everybody can enter type of thing. So here's entry number 1. This is the Find Your Fade. And yes, it is 8 feet long. It's sort of like a tent. I have to actually roll back to be able to show it to you. So this is the Find Your Fade. I can't show you the whole length because it's way too long. It's a shawl on steroids. It's huge. So there's the one entry. The other possibility is my On the Spice Market, and that is this one. And it's funny, I was watching Cozy Up with the knitting, with the stitching. I showed it to you inside out. There's the right side. Okay. These funny little stitches here. Cozy Up with the Stitching Sisters, they're calling it the annoying stitch. It was my favorite part. I actually liked doing this because it went so fast. It was like, to me, it kind of reminded me of skipping rock. She kind of jumped over bunches of stitches. I had a lot of fun doing it. I didn't find it the annoying stitch. I had fun. So that is the On the Spice Market. So put in the comments down below which one. Oh, I got fuzz in my nose now from it coming. It's very soft and it's got like little fluffies, and now I've got fluffies in my nose. Put down in the comments down below which one you think I should enter in the fair. So and I'll let you know which one won next week. So I think that is pretty much it. I need to get back downstairs to my husband because the poor man has been out there in the heat for an hour, and I need to go relieve him so he can go do something he would like to do. So again, thank you to my husband for manning our yard sale so I could come up and do the podcast, and I will see you again next week. And I will stick a couple pictures of our yard sale at the end just for fun. So talk to you later. See you next week. Bye.